Hello and welcome to PK Glitz. I'm Janelle Marshall. Today's class is going to be on Embossing 101. We've been asked to do this class many times because of our wonderful Powder Keg Embossing Powders. Well, in today's class we hope that maybe you'll learn a couple of things or just be reminded of a few. Let's begin. The supplies needed for our Embossing 101 class are these. First and foremost, you need an embossing ink. Not a watermark pad, but an actual embossing pad. The difference is that you get a lot more of the product on your surface when you stamp your image. Consequently, it will attract more powder and you'll get a much nicer finished look. Now, I'm also showing a little bottle of re-inker here as well. That keeps your pad nice and moist. We also like to use the anti-static powder if we're in an area where there is a lot of static electricity buildup, and our anti-static brush. Sometimes you might try, though, just using your anti-static brush first, because a lot of times it will simply remedy the situation. Obviously, we're going to need our stamp, some cardstock to do our work on, and application spoons. Another thing very important is our embossing powder, and there is a difference in quality on embossing powder. The Powder Keg embossing powders actually have more color on the bead. Consequently, you can heat them a little bit longer without getting that milky or hazy look. A little bit of sticky tape will help us when we're putting our card together. Our heat tool, and I prefer the heat tool that has the nozzle that is a little bit narrower more than the type that looks like a little hair dryer. I think that you will find you get better results with this particular heat tool. Now let's get started. Okay, let's begin our class. When we're embossing, and we're talking about embossing powder in our heat tool, a couple of things that are very important, of course, the quality of our powder and the quality of our embossing ink. As I said before, we want to be sure that we're using embossing ink, not watermark ink. It will give you more ink on your paper, collecting more powder, giving you a prettier look. Now sometimes, depending on the part of the country that you live in, you'll notice that you have those little flecks that kind of stay behind. A way to remedy that is using your anti-static powder. Now some of you have the little embossing buddies and that sort of thing, and that's great. Those will work as well. It's essentially the same material. However, our anti-static powder comes loose. Consequently, you can put it in a little Ziploc like I have right here, use it over and over and over again. Where the powder that comes in the little bags, ordinarily you would just throw the excess powder away. So we feel like it's a good value for you there. Now once we have our paper prepared with our anti-static powder to keep our little flecks away, we're going to take our stamp, and I'm using this little Thinking of You today. This is a stamp by Endless Creations. They have some really nice message stamps, and we use our message stamps so often. One of the things I like to do as well, instead of stamping my ink, I like to ink my stamp. The difference is, this way I can actually see that my stamp is totally covered in the ink before I actually do my stamped image. Now, I told you just a few moments ago that if you had a little piece of the foamy left over, that I would show you a little trick with it. If you place your cardstock or paper that you're going to stamp on top of your foamy surface, it actually gives you just a tiny bit of cushion. And that cushion is enough to give you a clearer stamped image. Notice I'm simply pushing from the sides of my stamp down. I'm not rocking. I'm not giving it extra power on top. No reason for that. You actually can push so hard on your stamp that you end up changing the image itself. And we don't want to do that. So now we have our ink on there. We'll add a little bit of powder, give it a soft tap. No excess because we used our anti-static powder. Now we'll heat that. When you're using your heat tool, be sure that you turn it on for just a few moments before you actually use it. If you put it to your paper prior to that, it really won't melt your powder and it simply warps your paper. So let it warm up a little bit first. Then come down to your powder and just stay on the image until you see it start to turn. We call this M&M, and that stands for melt and move. When it melts, you move, but not beforehand. Once your powder does have that shiny finish, move on. I tell my classes there's no such thing as shiny-er. We just get shiny. So once you've got that shiny surface, your piece is complete. It's a great way for message stamps, but we're going to, in just a moment, do some stamps that have figures on them as well. We've done our message stamp with a single color. Now let's go on and do an image stamp, our rose. We have our cardstock, but before we get started, let's take our anti-static powder and go over the entire image. Now, laying it on top of our small piece of foamy here so that we get a really nice contact, we're going to take our ink and once again ink our stamp. This allows you to really see that you've got ink in every place that you need it. Going to lay that on top of our cardstock. And again, just kind of hold it from the edges, straight down. The better quality stamps, you're going to get pressure in every area that is necessary. Hold the stamp to the cardstock long enough for the ink to transfer. That's very important as well. Once we're sure that's done, straight up, pull away, and now we'll start adding our colors. When I'm doing a stamp like this, a lot of times I'll turn the stamp so that I can actually see the image, and that allows me to know where my colors are going to go. I'm using a gilded grape leaf green on the stem and the calyx of my rose. But now I can also see that there's a tiny bit of calyx that runs through the rose and another small portion that comes off here to the side. So viewing my picture helps me to do that. Give it a little tap, let the extra fall away. I will move that to the side, go on to color number 2. I'm going to use a little of my poppy jasper for the throat of my flower. So just a little bit through here like so, extra back in the pot, and any little extra fall into our coffee filter there. Then my last color is going to be the China Red, a nice, rich, beautiful red rose. Once again, extra falls away. Now that's what it looks like before heating. Once again, remember we're going to turn our heat gun on for just a moment and let it warm, then we'll start to melt the powder. And again, when you're heating, it's not a flag, we don't want to wave it. Stay in one specific area until you see the powder start to turn. And by turning, I mean it starts to get shiny. Sometimes the color will actually change on it a little bit, but it will start to get shiny. Once it does, then it's back to M&M. Melt and move. When it melts, you move. Just that quick and easy. We have a beautiful image ready to go. We're going to add one more little thing to that. Let's go back and get that little message stamp that we used a little earlier. That Thinking of You by Endless Creations. We're going to ink our stamp. Got our little piece of foamy underneath here so that we get a nice image. Straight down onto our card. And just hold it in place there for a moment. Say Mississippi. There we go. And set that to the side. Then this time I'm going to use a nice, wonderful, rich gold. Everybody has to have gold and silver and copper in their group of colors. There we go. Now, though it looks a little dull right now, when we heat that with our heat tool, we're really going to see a change. Notice how quickly that turns over, how bright and beautiful it becomes. Doesn't take any time at all. Now when we add that, to our cardstock. Isn't that great? Okay, let's do one more. They say anything you do in threes, you'll truly remember. This time I'm going to use a little botanical dragonfly stamp by Stampers Anonymous. It's one I've had for years. I use it in a lot of different ways, and I just love the pattern on it. So we're going to start out first by preparing our paper. So let's get our anti-static powder. We're going to go all over the cardstock, just like so. Set that to the side. We're laying it on top of our tiny piece of foamy. Gives us just a little bit of a pad. Remember, we're going to ink our stamp, not stamp our ink. So here we go. You can get in every little nook and cranny and side area all the way around. Get a nice layer of ink onto your stamp. Then we'll place that right in the center of our cardstock and just hold it firmly in place. Give it a chance for that ink to transfer over to the paper. Remember we said Mississippi, at least that much, okay? Then pick your piece straight off of your paper, set that over to the side where you can see it a little bit if you'd like to. It helps me to know my pattern. And then I'm going to do something a little bit different. With this one, I'm going to do a little tricolor effect. Starting with my azure blue, I'm just going to cover about 1/3 of my image, just like so. Then we'll come in with a little bit of our gilded grape leaf green. It's one of my favorites for natural, floral, and all that sort of thing. It just is a great, great color. Okay, there we are so far. And then our last color will be Purple Rain. Those three are going to give us a great, great look. Just a little bit more. I missed a spot there. Okay. And there we have our powder applied. Now I want you to look at the detail that you're able to see because we used the anti-static powder and because we only stamped the stamp hard enough to get our image. We didn't ruin the image by pressing too hard on top of it. Now that we have that portion done, remember, warm up the heat gun first. Then apply it to your image. And stay in one area until you see that start to turn shiny. Once it does, then we're on to M and M. Melt and move. As it melts, you move. Remember once again, there's no such word as shiny-er. We get shiny. And we'll turn that around, get these last few little bits right over here. And there we have it. The gossamer wings of a dragonfly in 3 gorgeous colors. We can take that, add it to our cardstock, maybe a little bit of Brad technique or two, and we would just have a phenomenal piece to send to a friend. Here are just a few samples of embossed work. We started out, remember, with just image embossing, and that's exactly what is on this card. But didn't it turn out pretty? Here we've taken a pear stamp using burgundy, New England autumn, and buttered rum, done a great job of contour. And here's our botanical dragonfly. Didn't he turn out pretty when we had him on the card? And last of all, it might be simplest, but it's simply stunning. I hope you've enjoyed your class today, Embossing 101, and that you'll join us for our other Jammie classes. To do that, simply add your name to our email family list at our website. And also check out our kits available in the PK Glitz store. Until next time,